Hello and welcome to a new video. This is Mum of the Show and I'm glad to be your presenter today. And in this video we're going to be discussing quite an interesting challenge in Power BI that faces quantity surveyors and commercial managers when they want to track the expenditure on a periodic basis. And before diving in the video, I want to emphasize that the video is mainly split into two parts or two sections. A section for the periodic tracking of expenses or expenditure over the last month, and the second section of this video is tracking the average of the expenditure over the last quarter. So the main purpose of this video is to help those who want to track the periodic payments on Power BI and drill down correctly in the hierarchy. So as you can see on the screen, we have 2 months here where the drilling down is providing inaccurate results. I'm going to show you how to drill down properly and show the accurate results. All the files that we're going to be discussing in today's video are available on one of my GitHub repositories, which is called Construction Data Analytics. So you can visit my webpage on GitHub, which is github.com/Marshall93/construction data analytics. And then you can find the wide variety of them tutorials and projects that I've worked on. And the one we're going to be discussing in today's video is called the track periodic spend. And when you open that repository, you're going to find 2 files, the Excel file that we're going to showcase in this video, and also the Power BI file that we're going to be expanding on. So you don't need to stop the video at any point in time and then type down the DAX measures that we're going to be speaking about. All what you need to do is just download these 2 files and you can follow along easily. And now without further ado, let's get started. So the main dataset that we're going to be dealing with in this video is some sort of realistic dataset for a construction project where you are getting data from different applications for payment, and there is a hierarchy of activities and work packages and the likes. Definitely in the construction world, unfortunately, the majority of contractors, they don't provide the applications for payment in a ready database format, but for meaningful analysis and ease of analysis, the quantity surveyor will have to convert the provided data into a database format, as you can see on the screen. So the dataset itself is quite straightforward, just the application for payment number, the different levels of hierarchy for the activities and work packages and the likes, the cost, and also the AFV submission date or the AFV date as per the evaluation schedule. And then we're going to be importing this data into Power BI. So let's start with the analysis itself and building the reports. Opening a Power BI blank report, we can then import the Excel sheet in the designated place. And then basically I've imported that and I have chosen the right data type for each and every single column, the costs as a currency, the AFB date as a date, and the rest as text. And then let's build a simple matrix visual. We're going to be putting in this matrix visual the application payment number, and then the work package level 1 and level 2, and then we're going to be expanding on all of them. And let's put the costs as well in the values so that we can see the split of the costs on monthly basis. And then what we want to do is create a measure the previous month spent. So let's call it previous month spent. And the methodology of thinking is creating a variable for the current month, creating a variable to detect the previous month, and create a variable to calculate the costs if the date corresponds to the previous month. So for this, I found a technique that is quite useful, which is creating a variable. We're going to be calling it current month. That's going to be the selected value of the dates of the AFBs, and then creating another variable, and let's call it month 1. That's going to be equal to the end of month for the current month, and another variable for the previous month, which is going to be end of month of the current month, and let's call it -1, which basically goes back 1 step into the previous month. And then what we're going to be doing is returning the calculation that we want. So we're going to be calculating the sum of the costs, and then we're going to be doing a filter. We're going to be respecting the choices of the end user for the filters, and you can choose that however you see fit. We're going to be respecting the filters on the dates, and we're going to make sure that the end of month of the AFB dates, so that we are analyzing row by row, is equal to the month 2, which is the previous month. And let's see the end result. Apparently I've made a mistake. I have forgotten to put here 0, which means that the end of the current month on row by row basis in the database that we have. So let's see the end result now. We're going to be putting that one here. So apparently I've made a simple mistake, which is we have done the all selected on the dates. Let's remove that to be everything that is selected in the table context, and let's see the end result. You'll see that it's working here, but it's working on an application for payment level, but not in the hierarchy itself. So we're going to be building another measure now to show you side by side what we have done and how this can be tackled. And now let's tackle the spend of last month and respect the hierarchical nature of the dataset. So let's do another measure, and we're going to be calling it previous month spend, and let's add the word hierarchy so that we can differentiate it from the other measure. So the methodology of thinking is mainly using the application for payment number to derive the date of the current AFP, and then using the date of the current AFP, we're going to be deriving the date of the previous AFP, and then using that previous date, we can get the number of the AFP and accordingly its value. So let's do that. So a variable for the current AFP number, that's going to be equal to the selected value of the AFP number. And then we're going to be deriving the current AFP date, which is going to be using the calculate function. So calculate, and then the maximum of the date, and then using the AFP number that we have just derived if the AFP number is equal to the current AFP number, and that's going to give us the current AFP date. We can then easily calculate the previous AFP date using the end of month function, which is going to be end of month for the current AFP date, and then we're going to be reverting back by 1 month. Having done that, we can then calculate easily the previous AFP number. So previous AFP number, and that's going to be equal to the calculate of the max of the number, AFP number, and that's going to be dependent on removing all the filters from the AFP numbers. That's the main trick here. And then when the date, which is going to be the end of month of the AFP date, and 0, which means that the end of the current AFP date at a row level is going to be equal to the previous AFP date. That's the main trick here. And then we can create the variable of the previous AFP value, which is going to be equal to calculate the sum of the costs of the AFP based on removing all the filters from the AFP number as above, and then making sure that the AFP number is equal to the previous AFP number. And let's review that here. So we've started with checking or getting the current AFP number, and then using this to calculate the current AFP date, getting the previous AFP date from the current AFP date by going back 1 month, and then using that previous AFP date to get the previous AFP number, and then using that previous AFP number to get the sum of the previous AFP value. And then what we could do is we're going to be returning a very simple formula. If is blank the previous AFP value, then blank, otherwise calculate the previous AFP value, and let's see the end result of this. So make sure that we are putting it in a currency format, and let's choose the matrix visual and put the previous month spend hierarchy in here, and hooray. When you summarize up to the AFP level, and we're going to be collapsing all, you wouldn't see really any difference. Let me change the format here to be pounds as well so that you can see it clearly, and you wouldn't see any difference whatsoever. The main gain is here when you expand to the nth degree. For example, here earthworks is 25,000 in the previous month, which is, as you can find it here. So that gives you accurate tracking on month by month basis depending on what you need, and we're going to be explaining in the next section how you can track the previous 3 months, and then you can take it however you see fit to the last 6, 9 months or even a year accordingly. Now, starting with another section of this video, what we're going to be doing is tracking the average expenditure over the last 3 months, and we're going to be doing it in 2 ways: the way which works only at a high level and the way that works in a hierarchy. And it's going to be up to the end user to choose which way suits the needs according to the data structure. So let's start with create another measure for the 3 months average spend, and with this it's going to be quite straightforward. What we need to to know is the current date. So let's do current date, which is going to be selected value of the date. And then following what we have done before is we're going to be creating a number of them variables. So month 1, which is going to be the end of month of the current date, and 0, which means this month, the end of this month. And then we're going to be doing it for month 2 and 3, which is the previous month and the month before it. So month 2 and month 3. And with this, we're going to be creating mainly 3 values for the AFBs. So month 1 AFB value, month 1 AFB, that's going to be equal to calculation of the sum of the costs. We're going to be making sure that we're going to be filtering the table and respecting everything that has been selected in terms of visual filters and context filters in the table. And then we're going to be making sure that the end of month of the current date or the AFB date in each and every single row is equal to the month 1. And we're going to be repeating the same for month 2 and month 3. As you can see here, it's quite repetitive, but we're reaching quite close to 30 lines in the DAX formula, so don't be concerned when you see that. And then mainly we want to have the average of these 3, but before we calculate the average, we want to make sure that every calculation is going to be done starting from month number 3. So for this, we're going to be creating another variable. We can call it whatever you want, really. I'm going to call it has 3 months. And for this, we're going to be making sure that the values that we have calculated for the 3 months AFBs are not blank. And all of this happens at the same time. So not is blank for month 1 AFB, and we're going to be repeating that again, and also for month number 3. This makes sure that the average is not calculated except starting from month number 3 onwards. And then we need also another variable to make sure that the average is calculated properly in the denominator. The denominator contains only the count of the non-blank rows. So we can call this variable count non-blank. And for this, we're going to be making very simple equations by checking if the months themselves are blank or not. So if not is blank for month 1 AFB, if it contains a value, if each and every single row contains a value, then give me 1, which is basically our counter. And then if it is actually blank, give me 0. And then we're going to be repeating the same for the different AFBs. So month number 2, and then finally month number 3, which is 2 months before. And then we want to basically say that we want to sum up what we have done in the 3 months and divide it by 3, or basically the non-blank rows. We're going to be doing some sort of like a safety net. We're going to be starting by saying that if the count of non-blank that we have just calculated is equal to 0, which means everything is blank, then don't show anything at all. And then if there is something there, if there's an actual thing, then the second safety net, if the has 3 months is fulfilled, then we can easily calculate the actual average, which is the month 1 AFB plus month 2 AFB plus month 3 AFB. And then the denominator is going to be the count non-blank. And then if the condition of has 3 months is not met, then return a blank, and then close that if, and then close that one as well. And let's see that. So we need to convert it into pounds currency, and then let's put it so that you can see it easily. So again, the same like the previous month spend, it's calculating correctly up to the AFB level, as you could see here, absolutely fine on AFB level. But when you drill down to the nth degree, that's where you get incorrect numbers. And we're going to be showcasing in a little bit the same methodology of thinking that we have applied in the previous month spend hierarchy. We're going to be implementing it in the 3 months average spend hierarchy. So following the same strategy that we have done before, we're going to be creating another measure, which is 3 month average, and then let's call it hierarchy so that we can differentiate it. So same methodology of thinking, we're going to be starting with getting the AFB number of the current AFB number, and that's going to be equal to the selected value of the AFB number itself. And then we are going to be getting the corresponding date of the AFB that we're on. So it's going to be the calculation of the max of the AFB date based on the AFB number. So the AFB number is equal to the current AFB number. And once you do that, we have calculated successfully the current AFB date. And then having calculated that, let's be quite straightforward and quite systematic with the naming conventions. Let's create something called month 1, which is the current month, and it's going to be the end of month of the current AFB date and 0. And then create 1, which is called month 2, and that's going to be -1. And then create month 3, which is going to be -2. And then we have got the date itself. We can even call it AFP1 date to make it easier to understand. And then that's AFP2 date and AFP3 date. We can then get the number of each and every single AFP. So let's do AFP2 number. And that's going to be equal to the calculation of the max of the AFP number. We're going to be removing the filters in the table for the numbers of the AFPs. And then we're going to be saying that if the end of month of the dates for each and every single row in the table itself, which is the AFP date column, AFP date column, and it's in its current context, which means the end of the month, is going to be equal to the AFP2 date. Let me put the mouse away so that you can see it. And that's going to be basically it. We're going to be repeating that again for AFP number 3. I'm trying to create the same formulas across the board. So that's now done. And then it's time to create the values of the 3 AFPs, the current, the previous, and the before previous. So let's build one here, which is called AFP1 value. That's going to be equal to the calculation of the sum of the costs of the AFPs, making sure to remove the filters of the AFP number, and making sure that the AFP number is equal to the current AFP number. That's for the current one, current AFP number. I can make it easy by saying that, let's call that one AFP1 number. I'm going to change it here, AFP1 number. So we're going to be changing it here, AFP1 number. Why I'm doing this, I'm just trying to maintain the same naming conventions across the board so that we can copy and paste it multiple times however we see fit. And then we can do the AFP2 and then also the AFP3. And then following the same methodology of thinking in the previous measure that didn't work in a hierarchy, we need to do 2 things. The has 3 values or 3 months, which means that we are going to make sure that not is blank the AFP1 value, and not is blank the AFP2 value, and also the AFP3 value. Okay, so that we start from month 3 onwards. And then we need also to create the count non-blank so that we are creating or calculating the average properly using the actual rows which contain numbers, not just all of them rows. So what we're going to do is here, we're going to do the same as before by creating 3 simple if conditions for the 3 AFP values. So if the not is blank for the AFP1 value, if it contains an actual number, then give me 1, otherwise give me 0, and that's going to be our counter for the rows. And we then can copy and paste it twice, just changing that one here to 2, and then the last one is going to be AFP number 3. And then last but not the least, we're going to be returning the actual result. And as you can see here, we're reaching quite close to 60 rows in the DAX. Don't you worry about this. It just follows a systematic approach in thinking. I'm going to be saying that if the count non-blank is equal to 0, this means that there is blank rows and we don't need to return any result in here. So just going to be using the blank. And otherwise, we're going to be checking if we have 3 months, then do the actual calculations, which is by dividing all of them AFPs. So AFP1 value plus AFP2 value plus AFP3 value divided by the count of non-blank that we have just calculated. And then if we don't have 3 months, which means that we are in month 1 or 2, then return blank. And that's basically it. And let's see how things roll here. Okay, so let's make sure that we have converted that into currency, and then let's dive in here. Hooray. So that worked. And the main thing that you can explore is, for example, civils here is repeated somewhere else in the past, and sometimes you don't get granularity up to the nth degree because over the last period, whichever period you are choosing, if it's 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, it doesn't really matter. You might not have the same activities happening over the last X amount of months. And now, what's the final verdict? We have explored in this video how you can track the costs on a monthly basis or over a specific period in time and derive the average, whether the average is for a couple of months or 3 months or 6 months or whichever period you see fit. Which formula to use? Well, in my experience and based on this example, which happens with me every single month, I truly believe the hierarchical format of the formula is really useful because that can answer my multitude of questions. If these work packages were tackled over the last X amount of months or not in a mathematical format. However, if your data or if the reporting requirements are up to the top level, then you might be good to use the non-hierarchical format that we have used by making the best use of the AFP number and then deriving lots of stuff from it. And that is all for this video. I really hope you find it useful and insightful. If you really like this video, do not forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and activate the bell icon so that you get notified of the latest updates. And you can check in our channel a couple of them playlists that are related to the deployment of construction data analytics in the construction industry, as well as the deployment of AI and machine learning in the construction industry as well. Thanks a lot for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.